All right, here we are with Wet Your Palate. We got myself, Joe Wagner, Chris Fat Mario Rubio, and a special guest on this episode of Go With Your Palate. So if you want to stick around for it, we went through a number of different items. Of course, Robbie is a well-known winemaker here in Napa Valley. Great to have you.
Oh, man, it was a pleasure. It was a lot of fun.
What were some of the highlighted topics that you would say are on this podcast?
Well, Cyborgs is where we finished, and that's a little bit out there. We talked hogs.
Yeah.
We talked 4-8.
Getting to hear about what you do, the wines that you make for yourself, the wines that you make for other people, and how you dissect that into kind of different compartments. I found that extremely fascinating.
The difference between what it is like to have a real human connection in what you do, as we were comparing somms and wine consulting and stuff
And
like that.
that would be somms, not psalms.
Somms. Yes.
Yeah.
Somms. Somms?
We have something really special here in California, which we call the Grape Crush Report.
Yes.
And the Grape Crush Report just gives you a bearing on kind of what the value of varietals are from different regions throughout the state. And they broke it in...
The price of grapes.
The price of grapes, per ton. And so there's all these different classifications. I don't want to get into the details of it, but overall, if you were to say Napa County is what it would take in as a whole, it's somewhere around, as of now, about 9,000 a ton, just round numbers.
For average.
That's average.
That's average.
That's average. Now you start talking about the primo areas of Napa, and then you start crunching those numbers because it tells you every single transaction that occurred in the valley. And so it encompasses everything throughout the state. Mm-hmm. And so you can say, I'm going to take the 95th percentile and say, like, that to me is Western St. Helena, Eastside Calistoga, Atlas Peak, and maybe a few other areas, like just in general.
Pritchard Hill?
Yeah, Pritchard Hill, absolutely. So there are a few, and there's always anomalies in there, right? There's great stuff coming out of parts of Oak Knoll too. So
sure, Coombs.
Yeah. And so, but if you say, okay, that 95th percentile, meaning the top 5% of grape sales, and you crunch those numbers, I don't know what they are or what they were last year. I'm going to guess it was $30,000, maybe $35,000 a ton, right?
Yeah.
So now you're looking at an average of 9,000. You take the simple math and you say, well, how do you make money at that? And you say, well, you do the old Beckstoffer thing, 100 times bottle price.
Yep.
So you're divided by 100, and that's your bottle price. So now you're
$9,000 a ton is a $90 bottle.
Yeah, makes it simple, right? And so you now go back to one of the first things we said in the podcast. I don't know if that got cut out because we were just kind of chit chatting, but you could buy good fruit for $2,000 a ton this year because nobody has a home for it.
Yep.
So just looking for something, you're like, holy shit.
That's an anomaly.
That is an anomaly. It doesn't happen often at all. But I think that people don't understand on the business side of it. I don't know what you're paying for a ton of fruit from this ranch, but
it's approximately $12,000 a ton.
There you go.
Yeah.
And so the math works out, and you make a little bit of money.
Yeah.
But you're sustaining your love of what you do for yourself personally.
That's
most
really
importantly.
it's like it's not bullshit. People, this is a labor of love and this is whatever. And I also don't say this is like a hobby project or a passion project because that diminishes it. That means like, oh, it's just something funny I do on the side. My passion project is mountain biking, whatever. That doesn't do anything. This is, what I'm really, passionate about. But I'm getting the thumbs up there from the booth.
This guy's an avid mountain biker.
He just like lit him up.
Yeah. So we're talking about Art in the sound room. And one thing that's really interesting about Art when you go mountain biking with him on a 105-degree day is, I don't know why, but he doesn't ever perspire.
Oh, my God.
Yeah.
My hat, it's like someone put like a rain helmet, put like a rain thing in there and just like I can't see out of my eyes. I'm like in the movie Airplane, you remember when he's trying to like land the plane and he's just sweating profusely? Yeah, that's me.
We used to lead some adventures. We have to get back into it for mountain biking.
Yeah.
Like hire stuff like that. He'd get a whole crew and like take people up there. I mean, I was one of those people too.
Yeah.
Went out there and I had no experience with mountain biking, and then definitely humbled me. But
all right, Art, we're going though.
Like
we're going.
Game on, buddy.
All right, let's go. Let's go.
We had to take a little break because of the people. Some people got lost. We can't talk about that.
Now wait a minute. They were technically not on a mountain bike. They were hiking.
Oh.
It was just the finance department. Joe didn't even sweat it.
Yeah.
But what you guys were just talking about, Art had an example of the report and stuff like that. But it's just so interesting. I'm glad I could like.
It's
people
good that it is
analyze it.
documented. I hate filling it out, and also like it's like confusing sometimes because it's like Napa Valley averaged. We hear that all the time, and it's like I rarely, if ever, get anything of Napa Valley. No one it's a cycle, right? Because everyone writes these contracts that you would know. We're 10% over Napa Valley average.
Yep.
So written into that contract, which everybody has, is this cycle that this year it's 9,000, next year it's going to be 9,900.
Yep.
We know this already. It doesn't match inflation. It doesn't match supply and demand. It's because all these damn contracts are written that it's 10% over, 20% over, 30% over average.
And it continues to just ramp up. So, and I
feel like we're shooting ourselves in the foot.
I agree with you on that. And so we did something to try to curb kind of the fluctuations, these massive fluctuations, years ago. And so what we started doing was looking at how can we take the average of the previous 5 years increases, so that like, if it drops off a cliff one year, or if it goes through the roof one year, both parties are not in some sort of financial duress, right?
Right.
And so that's something that we were able to pitch and successfully have growers sign on for any of the fruit that we purchase. And it really has leveled out the increases. I mean, you'll still see some big ones when, consecutive years when the economy's booming and everybody wants to get into high-end cab and they're throwing out 30% above average and all that. But like, it really has helped out. And just the structure of a contract, we could probably do a whole podcast on that if somebody was ever so willing to listen, because it's, it's like anything else in life that you do in business. What are the things you don't want to miss out on a contract? And some of those things of like just thinking, how do you soften a year-to-year blow? So if you don't have any floor or ceiling on, say, your consumer price index, even if you're in real estate, and you're looking at it going like, well, traditionally it's 4%, 3, 4, 5%, whatever, and then all of a sudden one year inflation is insane, and you're like, it's 12%. You're like, I was not expecting that. I can't afford it. And I mean, we're even seeing it right now. Like, I read an article this morning about interest rates on credit cards. Dude, I had no idea that they had gone up.
I don't either.
They're
What are?
I think people are paying like over 20% now.
What?
Yeah, on with certain cards. I don't know what. Maybe it's just
so absurd.
Maybe they just didn't read the contract, and so they signed on for something that's like, it's a multiple of whatever the interest rate is or something like that. So
good Lord,
average APR for a new credit card. Average. This is right now, 24.46%.
That's what Mother Google is telling me.
Can you believe that?
I mean,
I didn't. I think I was like post 21. I think I was like well into my 20s when I realized that, like, I believe it was like 1982 or 81, where like home mortgages were at 19-20%.
That's absurd.
I didn't never know that. I mean, my home mortgage is 3%. Maybe it's 2.9%.
Yeah.
18, 19, 20% for a home mortgage. That's crazy.
And we all just started thinking that like 3, 4, or 5% was normal.
Yeah.
Oh no, this is credit card.
Yeah,
that's credit card.
No, so it's gotten absurd. But I think that number one, we could get into this if you want to, but like our schools don't teach this stuff.
No.
And that's a huge problem. And like
my school didn't teach me this stuff because I didn't know until I was 25 years old.
Exactly, didn't teach me, and so now we're left teaching our kids, and I don't have a finance background.
Yeah.
But I fortunately have been able to learn about this stuff.
Yeah. To
some degree. I mean, like the guy that runs finances for us, he is like, I don't know, light years above my abilities.
Yeah.
And so, I'm learning from him still, like every day, every time I talk to him. But just the fact that you put these humans in the wild as an adult at 18, and then they have to figure out on their own, like, if you haven't given them the basics or like sat down with them and said, here, get a credit card at 14 years old, we're going to sit down and talk about this once a month. Mm-hmm. And it sounds so easy, but as a parent, to make that time
Yeah,
And
but
and
I
to
did
even
that
think
with
about it.
like I set up for both my kids an E-Trade account.
Yeah.
And they learned a lot, and like Will took it as a passion, and that's what he wants to. That's what he's studying at University of Washington is finance, and he still is involved with his trading, and like went and like bought Tesla at like $150 or something, and then now it's I don't know what it is now, and it's split and whatever else.
Yeah, a bunch of
but
times
he got like it like was like he bought it like 150 and it went down to 75, then it went up to like 185. He had I think 2 shares, and he sold them because he got nervous. But now he knows, and it's like he's like going, God,
I think most parents don't actually sit down and take that time, and
No.
and I do, and it was actually just last night. I have 2 kids who are in 4-H, and that's one thing I like about 4-H because you can really get them in at an early age, and understand it. But I don't think most kids even have that opportunity.
Sure.
So it's as simple as a credit card, opening up a bank account, funding it with a couple $100, and then let them learn. But we raised pigs, and 2 of their friends raised pigs as well.
Yep.
And so I kind of like funded the whole thing for their first year, but they had to pay me back.
But how do they get paid back? I mean, how do they get paid?
They get paid at the fair when they sell the animal, right? So they got their
But
checks.
tell your audience how much one of those pigs might go for.
Oh God, Napa is a whole different. Like, if anybody in
wild.
like
Oh,
Ohio
it's
is
wild.
listening to this right now, they're gonna be like, "Screw you, Napa," because they're getting like more like market rates for their pigs per pound.
Yeah.
So you bring them up, onto a stage, you show them, and you got bidders out there, and usually it's people that are either looking for meat for home, and it's really good quality meat, and you can buy all different types of animals, whatever else.
Supporting the school.
and so so in Napa, it was. I mean, you were probably looking at per pound an average of $24 a pound, which is way above what's probably going in like the majority of the U.S. at
And
4 or 5.
So the hog might be
250 to 290 pounds.
Yeah, so we're to thousands of dollars at these, and some of the kids raise like 3-4 hogs.
Yeah, and I'm like, no joke. One of the kids after, and then the fair takes 9%, which I think is a little rich for this. Like, that's come on.
I did not know this.
9%
from the kids?
It wasn't that
From-
I mean, I know like things have changed, but that sounds
They're
like they were
taking
like
it from the children.
Seriously.
But no, it's like, what do you guys need to pay for to take kids?
9%?
And I'm not. It was insane. Like, one of the kids was
the fairground
brought-
still looks like the same as when we were there.
no
like,
shit.
what have they been updating?
After that 9%, the check he got was $19,000.
Wow.
Yeah.
Those pigs cost $1,300 each to raise.
Yeah.
And so I had over
Okay,
the,
that's interesting to know. I didn't know what that.
yeah. So that
cost
was,
might be.
I'd say $1,300-1,500 is pretty normal right now, at least. I mean, and everything's
each.
each one.
Okay, so let's just do $1,500, $3,000, $6,000, $19,000. So it was a profit of $13,000. That's pretty good.
No, that was like 19,000, and he raised 2 pigs. So
so
he only-
$3,000.
$2,600.
Okay.
No, so $2,600 off of
2,600,
19.
sure.
So that was what he, got to bring home.
Yeah.
But so I had just made an Excel spreadsheet and was like going through the line items with all the kids that we helped out, and
Wow.
they're looking at it like okay, like they're just, but it's like you got to get that basic understanding of like a balance sheet. That's it. Yeah.
Is there? So what's the age limit again? Well, there's FFA.
You want to get into
You wanna
4-H,
get back
Chris?
into it? You want to get back into it? Everyone's like right now. Oh, wait a minute. What if I raise 10 pigs?
A movie or something like that, where it's like like these like where they have like a cop or something that has to do investigation, and, like goes back to high school, like as like.
I like 21 Jump Street.
Yeah, 21 Jump Street.
Yeah.
Thank you. So,
Yeah.
but it would be like for 4-H, and it would just be about making money, and there wouldn't be really.
No,
a case to
there's
solve.
actually stories about that out there that people
Yeah.
who are like 19, 20 keep going to 4-H and falsify their documents.
And also to get even into the fair, like even kids, because they know that how well the Napa Fair does, the difference between that and then other counties.
Yeah, I couldn't believe how
money
much
you
people
make.
were making.
And I wouldn't. I mean, you guys both have that in common too with guns, and you mentioned boar hunting. I remember I was on your podcast.
Yeah,
Cowboy.
but I didn't grow up with that. This is something that's more like my kid teaching me, like that was an interest that he had. And so my family, not even my whole family, it's like my brother, brother-in-law, friends. There were, it's part of Southern culture to be hunters, and they're more deer hunters and turkey hunters, and they had crossbows and all kinds of shotguns and rifles and everything. My brothers got everything. I didn't know this. Like, one of the first times, I probably was like, maybe when I was little, I shot something one time. I don't even remember. And then over time, some friend might have had a gun. I might have shot it. But I can remember very clearly going to my brother's ranch, and I'm probably 24 years old, and shooting guns with him, and just like Tom, because I didn't know it, because I hadn't held one, was shaking. Like, I did. It's like, oh my God, like, rightfully so. You have to be careful. But I was really like, not that I didn't want to shoot, but it was like, wow, this is something I don't know anything about. And so then, my own son, he is interested in hunting and in, shooting and just that, the whole concept of it, not even just hunting an animal, but the idea of shooting a gun at a target. Yeah. That's cool. And so I was like, well, I should probably learn, and I better supply him with some, so I better learn how to do it, whatever. So I just got into it that way. And then the same thing, like with going like boar hunting. Do I really care about hunting the boar? Not so much. Do I love walking through the Sonoma coast in the most beautiful place possible? And do I like wild boar and risotto with my Pinot Noir?
Yeah.
Hell yeah, I do. But, in terms of the actual hunting, that's kind of like third down on the list.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But so I've done wild boar hunting, and like I'll just turn it all to sausage.
Yeah.
And it's awesome.
Yeah.
And it's and I don't know, it's probably controversial to talk about in some
why
forms,
should
but
it be?
It shouldn't be at all. But you're like, yeah, this is I think I'd rather go out, if I'm going to use the meat, I'd rather go out and hunt the food.
Sure.
And utilize it, and it's
you have much more respect. It's much more intimate. It's much more honest and much more caring. And I don't know why we're going down this rabbit hole, but there is there are wonderful farmers out there who farm, whether they're cattle or pigs or whatever it may be, and do things in their abattoir or however they're putting down their animals in a very humane, wonderful way, which a lot of times does involve a gun, which is much more quick and healthy and wonderful than some of the other ways they manufactured food in the past.
Yeah.
It's done in a very caring way.
That's one of the reasons I'm a huge fan of things like 4-H, where you can go, and in most parts of the country, you can get split a steer 4 ways, and then you've got different cuts of beef and ground beef and whatever else with your friends, and you've got enough meat for a year, and you don't need to go and get it from something that was just a crappy kill house that was raised incorrectly and all hopped up on hormones and stuff. Right. And so you find yourself in this oddly a very small group of people in America. You've got everybody's like, no, I'm a vegan and animals should have rights and whatever else, and you're like, yeah, in the wild,
that's fine.
You go ahead, but don't tell me what to do.
Right.
And then you have the majority who are just like, my meat comes from the shelf at the store.
Right.
And not digging into kind of where it all comes from. And until you really compare the two and see what the difference is in quality, and then if you've never had wild game meat, that's a whole different experience.
Completely.
And so, I would say I'd encourage people, if you haven't tried it on this podcast, go try it, because there's a whole different world out there, and it's not inhumane, but you can be very selective. So
it's
if you
actually more humane many times. Yes.
Yeah. So I think that's a big part of it. Those are my beliefs.
Yeah, for people who are your listeners out there, and who people appreciate tastes and experience, whether it be wine or other beverages. I have absolutely no problem with someone who is vegetarian who goes, you know what, it just kind of grosses me out to eat meat. No problem whatsoever. Or someone who's vegan or gluten-free because they're like, it makes me nauseous, or it gives me the shits.
That's it. It does.
It's no problem. I completely get you. But it's like, if someone is being political about it, if it's not one of those two things, that it's just unappealing or whatever, And hey, I mean, I get it too because I subscribe to a lot of Buddhist practices, and those philosophies are supposed to be more like a vegetarian concept. Don't harm a living entity. Well, I don't view it that way. I have huge respect for the meat that I eat. I'm thankful that I get to have this, and I think it's delicious. And if you are grossed out by a McDonald's cheeseburger, I'm with you 100%. But if you have beautiful akaushi beef, it's an entirely different flavor. Yeah. Or if you have a wild boar, it's an entirely different flavor and a wonderful experience of the joie de vivre, just enjoying the things that we have at our fingertips. You can still be very respectful, very thankful, and you're nourished as a human. We have to have nourishment.
Yeah.
So there's nothing wrong with that. It shouldn't be a political thing.
And you've seen this stuff about bug protein and being able to create.
No,
well,
I don't think
maybe I'll start with
now
this.
I feel
Bug
ignorant.
protein.
I don't know. I feel ignorant.
So I think it was just approved. Some type of mealworm or something like that to create some sort of meat.
This isn't Soylent Green, is it? No. Soylent Green. No, never mind.
But have you ever had like eaten ants or
familiar? I have not. But
crickets or grasshoppers?
I have not. I'm familiar. Yeah.
So I've had I think there were grasshopper tacos, and it's like you got to try everything once. And honestly, like my mouth is watering thinking about them. They were really good. Yeah. They were all deep fried, and then all the fixings you'd imagine, as simple as you want or as elaborate as you want. So I don't have a problem with that.
Yeah,
they've been eaten by cultures across the world for millenniums, right?
Shrimp is just as disgusting as that, But I love shrimp.
But here you go with mealworms, which I'm not going to judge it. I haven't had it before, but the goal to replace what is kind of a more mainstream protein with something like this, and maybe this is more sustainable. Maybe this is I don't know. We don't know yet.
My God, yeah.
But still, are we just looking for sustenance, or are we looking for the culture of food?
Okay.
I think that's the concern I have with it, where it's like, are we all just? Is this where we start to become aliens?
Well, no, no. I'm with you, but it's a funny question. It's a provocative question, but it's a very, very real question. If you just think about food culture in the world, especially in the United States, post World War II, when we physically had to have the industrialization of food, there was a very real reason for that. People criticize, Kraft macaroni and cheese or whatever our processed foods are, for good reason, because it's not great for us. But those food scientists at the time were serving a very, very important cause, because we need to feed the people of the world first. Can we get into being a little bit more culinary and experience the joys of those things? Yes, we certainly can. And I certainly do recognize, again, not political, but as a farmer, as a biologist, as a scientist, that to raise akaushi beef to be the one primary source of protein for the world is not sustainable.
Yeah, that's not going to
work. Okay, so we're going to it doesn't mean we have to outlaw proper beef. Yep. It doesn't mean we have to outlaw hunting or whatever. It doesn't mean we have to outlaw even mainstream cattle farming, but having another food source that is readily available, less impactful, and can feed the world is very, very important.
And that's where I hope they're going with this. Yeah. Not just standardizing everything into kind of like, and then, now we have this source of protein, and now we have a reason to be able to shut down all of, these farms. So,
I'm not. Are you? Would you be fearful of that?
I'm not fearful of it yet, but you never know where we're going to go politically.
You never know. I mean, I just feel there's enough passionate people who want those things that just be like, no way. However, you never know, because that's probably like my biggest fault when it comes to any of these types of political things. I'm too naive to go, surely we're not going to allow that. And the next thing you know, it's like. So I have never had what is the term for it? Beyond Beef or.
There's Beyond, and there is Oh my God.
Impossible.
Impossible. That's it. Yeah.
I've
Yeah.
not had them. Have you?
I have tried both of them.
Mm-hmm.
Wait, I
And
always,
They taste kind of the same. I wouldn't say they're anything comparable to actual meat. You know, I've even tried the sausages. and-
better than a McDonald's cheeseburger.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay.
Yeah, better than a McDonald's cheeseburger. Better than a like true veggie. Like
yeah,
one of those-
bean burger
yeah,
or
bean
whatever
burger or
those
anything like that.
things.
So
yeah, I don't like those. I mean,
Yeah.
I'm not. It doesn't make me like repulsed, but
Yeah.
there's just I don't like a bean burger or whatever
Yeah.
or a veggie burger. The like the reason I haven't had the Impossible one is. Again, I'm not against it, but it kind of makes me a little bit like if I can now really understand people who are like eating beef is like makes me nauseous or I'm afraid of it.
Yeah.
That I'm the same
you
way.
got
I'm
the
like,
same-
oh God, what is that? I don't know if I want to. That makes
Like-
me sick.
Like I didn't like beets anyways, and now you put
Right.
beet coloring in this.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
No, I actually had I stopped by A&W over the weekend. This
Mhm.
last weekend, I hadn't had it in a while. Bacon cheeseburger, double bacon cheeseburger, and I got to tell you, it made me feel like shit for 24 hours.
Oh, really?
It was not good. I was like, why did I do that?
Why-
No.
I was like, I had to try it, and I was like, and I mean, I actually think that A&W is, and a lot of people throughout the country probably don't even know what A&W is. It's a pretty
Yeah.
small franchise now.
Especially for
What is
they
the
might know
beer
the
trend?
root beer, but not as a restaurant.
Yeah. And so it was actually one of the very original, fast food joints, and in California, and they expanded
And
for a
in
long
here
time.
in St. Lena.
Yeah.
Yeah.
well,
And
you
that's-
might have just killed A&W now, though.
No, but I'd say the same thing about if I went to any fast food place because
Yeah,
I
it's
try
processed.
to not eat a lot of processed crap, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so I think once your body gets used to that, and then you do eat a bunch of processed
Yeah.
shit, your body just flips out.
Yeah,
It's like,
yeah.
Oh yeah.
and then you got diarrhea for 3 days.
Yeah.
Like,
No, it's
like you
welcome
took
to
a
your
quick trip to
welcome to your
Mexico.
40s.
Tijuana.
it's the truth. You know? Or no, even for children, if you haven't eaten that, like one of my favorite, our kids didn't grow up on fast food. Which, by the way, I'm going to sell my son out right now because he's at the University of Washington and he grew up in one way, and I look at it. He's got his own finances, but somehow he's what would you call it? Stolen my DoorDash account.
Oh no!
And so I see all these charges in the past, like 3 weeks. I bet there's like $400, which he's clearly up at 2:00 in the morning, not only ordering for himself but for his friends. And so I'll get
On
these
your
bills
card.
on my card, and it's like $60-something from Taco Bell. And so I called him up at first.
Party.
Yeah, totally.
That's the way to
At
do
first,
it.
I thought it's like Taco Bell. There was McDonald's on there. There is other things that like are maybe local to Seattle that I don't know of. But like it was so much. I was like, the first alarm that went off in my head was, my card was compromised, right?
Yeah.
Someone took it. And so I called him and I was like, dude, do these charges make sense? And at first he was like, no. Yeah, maybe that's mine. Yeah, that's is Sizzle. Yeah, maybe that's mine. Burger King. Yeah, maybe that's mine. It's like okay, so look, I was like, hey, bro, I'm not mad at you. This does need to go on your finances, which we take care of anyway.
Yeah.
But please don't put it on my card because I keep that stuff separately.
I can see you're like
And
it's fucking with the AI that's giving me
Yeah.
ads online.
Yeah.
And then I was like, but second to that is spend whatever you're going to spend, but can you have a little bit better food selection for the love of God? And he was like, that's the only thing open at 2:00 in the morning. And I was like, well, maybe you don't eat at 2:00 in the morning.
Yeah, maybe,
You're
but
like, how's
maybe eat
your-
beforehand.
It's like
But-
the younger mom. You're like, how are you doing it without the shits? Like,
No, right?
That's the funny thing is like with my kids, like I'm telling them, you have every opportunity right now to eat like you're just a piece of
I really
trash.
miss that. Yeah.
Oh.
And
Yeah.
Because they're young and
Yeah,
they can
that's
their
what I
body
thought.
can
Yeah.
withstand it.
and they are so God, they look after what they eat. They count their calories, how many grams of protein and fat, everything they ingest. And like almost to a point where I'm like, this is unhealthy at your age, at 15, 16, 17.
Yeah.
Like I think it's actually kind of unhealthy. And I don't criticize them, and I don't want to, because I think they are establishing good diet and workout habits, and it's like, okay, if you're going to carry that in to life and to your adulthood, great, rather than
until they go to college and they'll start eating Taco Bell.
Is that when it started?
He didn't do that when he was growing up, but go ahead.
Dude,
yeah.
I would do the same thing. I'd be like, yeah, I'm gonna crush this, but then you hope that those bad habits don't carry on until you're 35 and your metabolism slows down, and all of a sudden you're sitting on the couch, you're like, what did I do with my life?
Yeah,
exactly. I want to throw this out here too, because Joe was just recently on your podcast.
Yeah.
So I also wanted to make sure we mention that again, because it was awesome. I really enjoyed the episode. It was a 2-part episode that you guys had together. Good conversation. So drop the check. I didn't know if you wanted to give like a quick just insight on what started that, like what made you kind of want to do that.
Yeah.
And then the second question I'm going to tag on there though is, and now, are you going to be on TikTok?
Good question. Good
I know
question.
it filled your brain, so let's start with.
So first, yes, Drop the Check Podcast, dropthecheckpodcast.com. Find it on Spotify, Apple, and wherever you. How do they always word that stupid the same thing? Like wherever you subscribe to your podcast.
Wherever you
get
subscribe
your.
to it.
You're going to say it in the cheesy salesman voice.
So, Drop the Check. Yeah, it was just something that I wanted to do, maybe for the same thing that you guys wanted to do, an anthropological exploration, where we're all here because of our industry, and we talk about malolactic fermentation, and we talk about sales in the Grape Crush Report, and we talk about all these things a lot of times, but and people, our customers out there, will tell you, oh, we want to know that insider information, and you start to talk about that, and then they quickly glaze over and go,
I know.
And
totally agree.
So I was like, I want to, tell the story of Joe Wagner, of like, who is that guy? That's the point of our Drop the Check podcast. You're sitting at the booth beside us when we're having lunch, and you're listening to the stories that we tell. So, that was, one element of it. Additionally, not just us talking like nerdy winemaking or grape growing stuff, but like I said to you earlier, how many times have you told your bio? Yeah. And it gets really stale, and I not only see it in myself, but I see it in my friends. Like, yesterday we had Elizabeth Viana from Chimney Rock on there, and she's a wonderful person and very honest, but there's still a manufactured bio that she must tell. Yeah. That, hello, this is who I am, and this is my voice of the winery. and like, I don't think that the consumer out there, and I'm a horrible marketer, so maybe I don't know, but I don't think the consumer wants to see that. I think they want to really know who Joe is. They want to know who Elizabeth is. They want to know who Robbie is on a daily basis. When I listen to my own Drop the Check podcast, I'm going, oof, I've dropped way too many F-bombs today. But what's the point? That's me. If you and I were sitting down for lunch, see, are we getting it from the booth? Art saying the same thing.
Robbie,
F-bombs in here.
Robbie, I don't even listen to my own podcast.
Yeah, so
thanks, Joe.
But that's the point of me doing Drop the Check. And then, so will I be on TikTok?
Yes.
Highly unlikely. I find TikTok wildly entertaining. I'm a voyeur. I like other people's stuff, and it'd be hilarious because, being like an old man, there's clearly this algorithm of like what comes up, of how, it feeds your feed. And like whatever I get, who knows? It's a lot of interesting stuff. But I find it fascinating. I'm just not much of a social media creator. I'm not opposed to it, but I'm much more of a digester, and kind of like going into like doing a podcast. One of the things is that I listen to so many podcasts. I mean, I don't watch that much television. Yeah. I listen to podcasts all day, every day, walking through the vineyard. I got my headphones in the car, on the drives around. And so like doing it for me was kind of like this, just like, I want to participate. I want to be cool too. I want to have one.
Yeah.
Well, but you have a story to tell, and people want to hear it. And,
I hope so.
And I also think you're a great interviewer and asking questions, and I think that's part of the art. So if you have guests on, like, that's an important thing, because people are curious about everybody else's experience, right? And that's you're garnering some information from that, and I think that's really what it should be about. Like, you know, some people listen to the murder mystery podcast, like that guy right there.
I do too.
Do you do too?
I do too.
Yeah.
I can't get into that stuff.
Okay.
It's the same as anything else. It's the same as wine. There's something out there for everybody, right?
Yeah.
So, and if you find something you like, then cool, keep going with it. Go with your palate. There you go. Go with
There
your
you go.
palate.
Go
There's
with
the
your
palate.
You brought it back.
Well done.
He does
And
every
cut.
time.
But I got to go back to TikTok real
Yes.
quick because
He's
I
an influencer.
don't like to.
Good, but we called you out on it on our podcast.
But I didn't want to do it, right?
Yes, yes,
and
yes.
so I thought, okay,
Yeah,
I'll give it
that's
a shot.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden realized, like, oh my God, there is a whole group of younger people out there, and I don't recall, but I might have challenged you to try to start a
It's
page.
up my game. Yeah.
Yeah. Like there's something there that doesn't really have to do with, you know, the production of wine and the intimacy that we have in our roles as winemakers. It's more about, you know, how do you add a little pizzazz to the day-to-day stuff you do?
Yeah.
And like if you were just to stop for a second, say, I'm barrel tasting today. How can I make this fun for a 15-second clip?
Yeah.
And then be able to execute that. And if it works, it works. If it doesn't, it doesn't. And yeah, there's got to be that like that impact, that kind of like that flair to it, or whatever you want to call it. That something that is going to possibly offend someone.
I don't really care so much about. Like I said, I'm aware of like my F-bomb dropping.
Yeah. I don't mean a
but-
direct offense, but I mean more of a like.
They know the true me now.
You're going to create the argument,
Yeah.
right? And so all of a sudden you're going to have people talking about what their opinion about this is. Like it's something as simple as we were ripping a vineyard, so in row, and we were using this thing called a vibrosoiler, which is just a shank, and it's vibrating and oscillating. And so we were talking about what it's doing, what the point of it was, and you know, encouraging root growth, etc. And so we had like, Mother Earth is crying, you know, like cultivation is
Comments.
Comments. But that drove this back and forth of like people saying like what's wrong with this? They're just cultivating their vineyard.
They're commenting amongst themselves.
Yes, and
I could care less.
and then that drives the viewership up, and then all of a sudden you have more people looking at.
Sure.
And so it's really funny. I don't really get it, like personally.
Yeah.
but I'm happy to be a part of it. But I'm hoping we get more people in the wine industry into it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I do. I agree. I think it's whether it's the wine industry or culture at large. I'm not against social media because, again, like I love anthropology. I love humans.
Yeah.
And I find them endlessly fascinating. I mean, you find wine interesting, you find vineyards interesting, you find this, that, and the other interesting. Just people blow my mind every single day.
Yeah.
And so I love that. And you know, it is a way for us to explore, you know, one another, and for us to express as well.
Yeah.
I mean, I told you, like, the when I was getting my guest list together for the, you know, podcast for my Drop the Check, it was Winton, my son, who, you know, texted me, and he was like, you know who you need on the podcast is Joe Wagner. And I was like, that's so funny to me. And part of it is that the kids know each other.
Yep.
But the what put it into his head, because he saw you on social media. He follows you on TikTok.
See, that's embarrassing to me.
Why? that's so, like, it shows you it shouldn't be embarrassing
No,
or
no,
not
it's,
embarrassing.
yeah.
It shows you the scope of the reach and that level of communication that that you put something into someone's head that it's stuck.
Yeah.
With a kid who doesn't, even as a teenager, he's not a drinker. He doesn't know anything about wine. He doesn't care, other than it's part of our culture. He doesn't care too much about it. But it was like your communication through social media that he was like, I like that Joe Wagner guy. You should have him on your
So it's
podcast.
like just thinking from an entertainment value from that generation's perspective.
Right.
And yeah, the way that they're ingesting entertainment versus the way that we ingest it.
Right.
God, you go back to the 80s, like alone, and it's like, wow, so different now.
It's sea change.
Yeah. It's got, and it's going to continue to get further and further away from what we grew up with, and we are just one big social experiment at the end of the day. And so to your point about anthropology and where things are going, we don't know. We're just along for the ride, and then one day we're going to be
present. Let's
be present. One day we're going to be gone. Could be tomorrow. Could be in, I don't know, modern medicine. It could be 200 years. Who knows?
Seriously, I mean, my dad didn't grow up in modern medicine. He's 93. It's like,
wow,
I don't want to be 103. I was like, I don't know.
I don't know. Well, if we get to, I'm hoping like the cyborg thing will start happening. I mean, I would be down to like have robot arms.
Okay, let's.
As long as I can have good hips, knees, and a back, and I'd like my eyesight.
Yeah,
if I can have those things, then I'll go.
Well, so this is the last thing we talk about. Okay,
he's looking over his shoulder at Art because Art's going, cut it.
He wants it.
Okay, so you got a couple different options on where the human form goes, right?
Okay,
let's go one cyborg. Okay,
yeah.
So cyborg would be part human, part machine.
Yes.
Okay.
That's one option. The other is that you have interchangeable,
with other animals?
No, actually, I don't
like
I don't
wings
know about that.
and stuff like that?
No, I was just thinking, like, imagine a chip that's able to chronicle who you are.
And then that could be moved to a different body.
Into a different body.
Like an avatar.
I've never thought of that.
An avatar thing?
And
yeah,
so
kinda.
between those two,
cyborg.
You think cyborg is more likely?
I don't have to second guess that at all. Oh, more likely or what you want?
No, more likely.
Oh, more likely to happen?
Yeah.
I'd say cyborg.
I think cyborg's going to happen.
Because we already are cyborgs, right? With just artificial knees, hips, and whatever.
It's already kind of happening. I think cyborg would be first, but I think eventually that's what it will be. It'll be just constantly taking out our DNA and consciousness as we're like evolving into different.
But it's not even. There's no need to really take out your DNA. I mean, I guess that they could, but then how do you? So okay,
because your DNA ultimately creates your brain, which ultimately creates your thoughts.
So how do you?
If you just are synthesizing a repetition of it's like AI, and why AI doesn't really. It's not as powerful as people are thinking about it. It's kind of dumb. And that's because you don't have new creation of thought in that way. You can, I understand, through neural networks, have problem solving, it's much more problem solving than creation. I don't know that you're going to have AI wanting to create a podcast.
Well, I don't think it's AI, but I think that if you're But
that's essentially what if you took a computer imprint of your brain and put it into a different organism, and that's the new Joe, then that's just AI, because that's what we are doing with AI.
So I'm saying from the moment of your death, you move into a younger life form of yourself, right?
Yeah.
So cloning needs
clone yourself, so you just keep being yourself.
Cloning is DNA though.
But so I'm saying what the apex might be, right? So if you clone yourself to a fully formed human of what you were, say in your prime, right? Like 24.
Ooh.
Yeah.
That was your prime?
Well, you can't.
Not in decisions on relationships, but everything else, yeah, pretty much.
But you can't clone to 24. You got to clone to 0.
Well, you need to incubate up to 24.
So you're just going to be in a box.
Yeah, you're in a vessel.
Okay, yeah.
Okay.
So, but now, this I'm just like, if there was a way to imprint, like whatever Elon Musk is talking about, right? So like you can take your memory from that moment of your last memory and implant it into something else and carry forward from there. So in 1,000 years, you have a 1,000-year-old brain, but you're still in a 24-year-old body.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think I could think that's a possibility, because you could also you're basically creating a memory card, but then through the art of cloning, you can have a new body. You could have a new physical organism and put those memories essentially into your your memory, but your new physical brain, which was created through your own DNA, would be living and surviving. That's pretty cool. I've never thought about that.
So thinking about it from that perspective, because if you were to just clone something, they're going to have a whole different life, right?
That's right.
They could be
I like this
homeless
idea.
and, whatever, heroin addict, right? Just depending on what happened to them throughout their upbringing and all that. So, like, you have to have a fully built vessel, so to speak. Now, the issue I have
and with the memory that you had that made Joe.
Yes, but the issue I have with cyborgs.
Could you please turn your phone off?
I know, I'm breaking my own rules. The issue I have with cyborgs is that we as humans are constantly we're desiccating.
Yeah,
we're oxidizing. So you can't possibly you're going to turn into a robot within a couple hundred years.
You're absolutely correct,
right?
and ultimately your brain would fail. This could all be metal, but your brain will biologically decay.
Yeah,
and so that doesn't work. So
I don't know. So those are my very light thoughts towards the end of this podcast.
Was deep. What are you talking about?
Dude, that is so deep.
I wasn't sure if you guys were like pumping THC into this room or something, because I was like, where did that come from?
And we were saying that we're going to keep hopping for bite, but I just want to say that the interesting thing with DNA, which is brought up, is I just read this book. It didn't start with you, and it's already been proven that even like trauma generationally can be passed on through DNA.
Yeah.
Which is crazy. So I'm just thinking about while we're thinking about this, and you're kind of hopping.
Dude, I'm going to interrupt you real quick.
Uh-oh.
So, okay, trauma being passed through DNA. Don't make that out.
Watch this.
First,
I knew I was going to set him up.
Okay.
I'm sorry that science
you make it sound like this is
a
a new problem. And guess what? When you make it sound like it's a new problem, you're going to create a whole generation of victims that are going to be like, "Oh, I had my passed down trauma from the that's
it's
bullshit."
Right here. It's right here. It didn't start with you.
You're running away from dinosaurs
Mark
a couple
Wolin, you should
million
read it.
years ago.
No, hey, I'm just talking about like the science part of it. I'm not trying to like create victims, but like people that have ancestry that could go and went through the Holocaust. And then they're experiencing that. Like, trauma now.
But that doesn't require anything. All biological life is a response to any environment it's around. Just like you said, you could have your genetic clone. It's just like in the vineyard, right? We have genetic clones.
Yeah.
But just because that plant was successful on that property doesn't mean its genetic clone is going to be successful on this property over here. It's the same with human life or any other sort of life. It's all a product of environment. And so to say that our trauma is DNA bound is not profound. That's what life is.
Yeah.
We are actually evolving through the trauma of ourselves and our ancestors.
That's right.
It's just an accumulation of it.
That's right.
So, but what you said and the way you put it, relating it to the vineyards,
Yeah.
beautiful.
Thank you.
Fucking perfect.
I think you got like.
I'm trying to.
Stealing
I think
that
you got a little chubby.
No, I got a chubby from that. I was like, oh,
I knew you got chubby. Gosh, I think we should just. It was beautiful, though. By the way.
Thank you.
All right. Well, hey, Robbie, it has been a real pleasure to have you on this.
It's a fun.
I loved it.
Yeah.
It was. Thank you guys for having me. I genuinely did have fun. It's great conversation. This is what it's about. And then I think that I'm going to leave the door open for you guys to have, guest appearances on my podcast. We have some nice collaboration going on. Because we're going to do what we're doing, and you guys may do something like this. You do your TikTok, like you said, as short segments. We have our long format podcast, but we already have our new spinoffs. So we Drop the Check as primary, but we have Dirty Dishes. We have Leftovers, and we have another one called Small Bites coming up that all have different themes, but like little 5-minute things. And like, why, when you have these great, conversations, do we not have guests back? It doesn't have to be someone new every single time. We can continue on little conversations in the small bites, in the small leftovers, and the other things. So I'll leave it at that. Thank you guys so much for having me.
Thank you.
Thanks for being here. Cheers.
All right.
Cheers.
Till next time.
Salud.
Till next time.
Until next time.
Peace.